In the rugged, untamed expanses of the Wild West, where danger lurked around every corner and justice was often a matter of a quick draw and a steady hand, there roamed a breed of men and women unlike any other. They were the American outlaws, feared and revered in equal measure, whose daring exploits and larger-than-life personas have become the stuff of legend. From Jesse James and Billy the Kid to Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen, these notorious figures embodied the spirit of the frontier, carving their own path through a land where anything was possible and anything could happen. Jesse James was born in Kearney, Missouri on September 5, 1847, and Frank was born a few years prior on January 10, 1843. Their father, Robert James, was a Baptist minister who owned a small farm with 6 black slaves. Their mother, Zeralda James, was a strong-willed woman who played a significant role in shaping their characters. Robert James died when Jesse was 3 and Frank was 7. Zeralda remarried twice. The James brothers grew up in Missouri during a tumultuous time. Missouri was a border state during the American Civil War, with a divided stance on the issue of slavery. The state was home to both Confederate and Union supporters, and guerrilla warfare was common. William Quantrill, a Confederate guerrilla leader, led a group of raiders known as Quantrill's Raiders, who terrorized and targeted pro-Unionists in Missouri during the war. Frank went off to join Quantrill, finding a friend in a fellow member, Cole Younger. Inspired, a young Jesse James went off to join another pro-Confederate guerrilla gang under Bloody Bill Anderson in 1864. After the war, Missouri was in a state of chaos. The state was still deeply divided, and law enforcement was weak. Frustrated with the idea of Southern defeat, many former Confederate soldiers turned to a life of crime, robbing banks, trains, and stagecoaches. The James brothers and Cole Younger, joined by Cole's own brothers, were among those who turned to a life of crime. They formed the James Younger Gang, which included several other former Confederate soldiers. The gang began their criminal activities in 1866, robbing banks and stagecoaches throughout Missouri. They quickly gained a reputation for their daring raids and their ability to elude law enforcement. Their exploits were celebrated by some as acts of rebellion against the Union and the Reconstruction government. However, they were also responsible for the deaths of innocent bystanders, and their criminal activities brought fear and violence to many communities. The James Younger Gang was responsible for several major crimes during their time as outlaws. In 1874, they robbed the first national bank in Northfield, Minnesota, which proved to be a fatal mistake. The townspeople fought back, and the gang was forced to flee, chased by posses. 2 of the robbers were dead, and Cole, with his brother Bob, wounded. The Younger and James brothers split up, seeing the Younger brothers wounded again and finally surrendered after a gunfight in 1876. The James brothers went into hiding in Tennessee. After attempting to lead a peaceful life, Jesse James grew restless and reformed the gang with new members, including Robert and Charles Ford, in 1879. The gang continued their criminal activities, robbing banks, trains, and stagecoaches throughout the Midwest. However, the new gang was not as successful as the old one, and law enforcement was closing in on them. On April 3, 1882, Jesse James was shot in the head and killed by Robert Ford. Ford had been promised a pardon for his crimes if he killed James, on top of the whopping $10,000 bounty on Jesse's head, and he saw an opportunity to collect the reward. The murder shocked the American public, and Ford was branded as a coward and a traitor. He himself would be shot in Colorado in 1892. Frank James surrendered himself a few months after his brother's death, but was not found guilty of his crimes in Missouri, Alabama, and Mississippi. He once again led a quiet life, dying in 1915. Henry McCarty was born in New York City in 1859, though his family soon moved to Indiana and then Wichita, Kansas. When Henry was just 13 years old, his mother died of tuberculosis. He moved to New Mexico with his older brother Joseph and began working on ranches in the area. It wasn't long before Henry started getting into trouble with the law. He was arrested for stealing food and clothing and spent some time in jail. When he was released, he worked as a ranch hand for a time before getting involved in a gang of rustlers. Henry soon became known as Kid Antrim, a name that he would later change to Billy the Kid. He was small and quick, and he could shoot a gun with deadly accuracy. He was soon wanted by the law for his skills in horse thievery and gunfighting. In 1877, Billy became involved with rancher John Tunstall. At the time, Lincoln County, New Mexico, was victim to a monopolized cattle and goods trade led by merchants and corrupt local lawmen, collectively known as the House. Ranchers and farmers like Tunstall obviously opposed this. In 1878, the House tried to put an end to Tunstall by trying to force Tunstall to surrender some horses to pay some outstanding debts of his. County Sheriff William Brady and his posse shot Tunstall in the head after a confrontation on February 18th. The killing of Tunstall set off a chain of events that became known as the Lincoln County War. The Regulators, a band of outlaws comprised of Tunstall's farmhands, joined by Billy the Kid, sought revenge against the men who had killed Tunstall. In April 1878, the Regulators attacked Sheriff Brady and his men in Lincoln, New Mexico. Brady was killed, and the Regulators were now wanted for murder. After the Lincoln County War, Billy went into hiding in the New Mexico Territory. In 1880, he was involved in a dispute with a man named Jim Carlisle, who was killed in an altercation. Billy was now a wanted man once again. After having a $500 bounty placed on him, Billy was eventually locked up in the jail in Lincoln, New Mexico, awaiting trial for murder. He managed to escape by killing 2 guards, and he fled to Fort Sumner. Sheriff Garrett, who had been tracking Billy for months, finally caught up with him at Peter Maxwell's house in town. In the night of July 14, 1881, Billy stumbled upon Garrett questioning Maxwell in Maxwell's bedroom, and was met with 2 bullets from Garrett's revolver. The first bullet struck his heart, killing him dead. Billy died 22 years old. Robert Leroy Parker and Henry Longabaugh, known as Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, respectively, were 2 of the most infamous outlaws in the American West during the late 1800s and early 1900s. Along with their gang, the Wild Bunch, they were responsible for numerous robberies of banks, trains, and stagecoaches throughout the West. Robert Leroy Parker was born in Beaver, Utah on April 13, 1866, the oldest of 13 children. His parents were Mormons, and Robert was, accordingly, raised in a religious household. In his early teens, he worked on a dairy farm, adopting the name Butch Cassidy after a fellow farmhand and a local butcher. Here, he got himself involved in crime, pulling off a heist in 1889 from the San Miguel Valley Bank in Telluride, Colorado, stealing approximately $21,000. Harry Longabaugh, on the other hand, was born in Montclair, Pennsylvania, on November 27, 1867, the son of a farmer. He left home at the age of 15 and began working as a cowboy in the West. After stealing a gun, a saddle, and a horse from a ranch in Sundance, Wyoming, and almost immediately captured afterwards, Harry adopted the nickname the Sundance Kid after spending an 18-month sentence. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid first met in 1896 after Cassidy spent some time in jail. They quickly became friends and formed the Wild Bunch Gang, a gang comprised of 10 members, operating primarily in Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado. Over the next 2 years, the Wild Bunch carried out a number of successful heists, including the robbery of a train in 1898, robbery of a bank in Montpelier, Idaho, 2 years prior. However, their most famous robbery was the 1899 robbery of the Union Pacific Overland Flyer passenger train near Wilcox, Wyoming, in which they made off with over $30,000 in cash and jewelry. Despite their many successful heists, the law eventually caught up with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and they were forced to flee to South America in the early 1900s. They first went to Argentina, where they worked as ranchers and began to establish new identities for themselves. However, they soon became involved in the local criminal underworld, robbing banks and stagecoaches throughout the region once again. In 1905, the Pinkerton Detective Agency entered Bolivia to track down and arrest Butch, Cassidy, and the Sundance Kid, who were suspected of robbing a mining company payroll. The Pinkertons were eventually able to locate the outlaws, and a shootout ensued. The fate of Butch, Cassidy, and the Sundance Kid remains a subject of much debate and speculation. According to one version of events, the two outlaws were eventually tracked down by the Bolivian army and killed in a shootout in San Vicente, Bolivia, on November 7, 1908. However, other reports suggest that the two men may have faked their deaths and lived out the rest of their lives under assumed identities, with Cassidy perhaps living out his life in the American Northwest all the way up to 1937. John Wesley Hardin was born on May 26, 1853, in Bonham, Texas, to parents James Gibson Hardin and Mary Elizabeth Dixon. He was the second child of 10 children, and his family was deeply religious, with his father being a Methodist preacher. At the age of 15, Hardin committed his first murder. In August 1868, he encountered an ex-slave named Mage, who he challenged to a wrestling match, which Hardin won. The next day, according to Hardin, Mage ambushed him, and as a result, Hardin shot 5 rounds from his revolver, resulting in Mage's death 3 days later. This murder marked the beginning of Hardin's life of crime, and he soon became known as a dangerous outlaw and gunfighter. Over the next several years, Hardin went on a spree of murders across Texas and the surrounding states. He killed at least 21 men, although some accounts suggest that the actual number may have been much higher. Many of his victims were lawmen who attempted to apprehend him, but he also killed several innocent people in cold blood. One of Hardin's most infamous murders occurred in 1874, when he killed Deputy Charles Webb in a gunfight in Comanche, Texas. Webb had been sent to arrest a friend of Hardin's for brandishing a weapon. When Webb went to show the warrant, Hardin drew his gun and shot Webb, killing him. Hardin's killing of Deputy Webb made him a wanted man, and he spent the next 3 years on the run. In 1877, he was finally arrested in Florida and extradited to Texas to stand trial for Webb's murder. Despite his claims of self-defense, he was found guilty and sentenced to 25 years in prison. During this time in prison, Hardin became a model prisoner, earning the trust of the prison warden and even teaching Sunday school to his fellow inmates. He was eventually released on parole in 1894 after serving 10 years of his sentence. After his release from prison, Hardin attempted to lead a law-abiding life, working as a lawyer and a rancher. However, his past caught up with him, and he was killed on August 19, 1895, by El Paso lawman John Summon Jr. The Dalton Brothers, Robert, Grat, and Emmett, made themselves known as an infamous outlaw group, renowned for their brazen robberies and violent crimes in the late 19th century. The three were a trio out of 15 total children, as a result of James Lewis Dalton and Adeline Younger Dalton, Adeline herself being an aunt of the Younger brothers mentioned in the Jesse and James Frank chapter of the video, making the Daltons and the Youngers cousins. In 1886, the Dalton brothers moved near Coffeyville, Kansas, inheriting a tradition of violence on the old stomping grounds of the Concho Raiders during the American Civil War. For a short time, the Dalton brothers actually took up jobs as lawmen. However, this did not stop them from leaning into a criminal lifestyle. Robert and Emmett pulled off their first robbery in 1890 at a gambling house in New Mexico, fleeing to California and their younger brother, Bill, at his ranch afterwards. Grat would be arrested the same year due to horse thievery, but was released on account of lack of evidence, and soon joined his brothers in California. The four brothers went on to unsuccessfully rob a train in Alia. Seeing Robert and Emmett flee the scene and Grant and Bill arrested, Robert and Emmett went on to found the Dalton Gang in the Indian Territory, now Oklahoma, with two ranching buddies, pulling off a successful train robbery in 1891. Meanwhile, Grant was found guilty and sentenced to 20 years. The Dalton Gang continued to rob banks and trains, gaining a reputation for their boldness in the process. The Dalton Gang's most infamous crime occurred on October 5, 1892, when they attempted to rob two banks simultaneously in Coffeyville, Kansas. The gang had carefully planned the robbery, hoping to make off with a large sum of money. However, their plan was foiled when they encountered resistance from the townspeople and law enforcement. The 15-minute shootout that ensued between the gang and the townspeople resulted in the deaths of 4 members of the Dalton Gang, including Robert and Grant Dalton, as well as 4 lawmen. Emmett Dalton was the only surviving member of the gang, and he was sentenced to life in prison for his involvement in the robbery, but he was later paroled after serving 15 years. Emmett went on to publish a book in 1931 talking about his experiences in the Dalton Gang, titled When the Daltons Rode. Emmett died 6 years later. Mira Belle Shirley, better known as Belle Starr, was born in Missouri in 1848 to John Shirley and Elizabeth Pennington. Her father was a wealthy farmer, and she attended a prestigious school for girls. Belle soon grew to love spending time outdoors with her older brother. However, during the Kansas-Missouri border war, Belle's brother joined Quantrill's raiders, getting killed in 1864. After the death of her brother, the family sold their property and moved to Texas. There, Belle met Jesse James and the James Younger Gang, and quickly became enamored with Cole Younger. Belle later married Jim Reed, whom she had known since childhood, and had 2 children. Belle and Jim moved to California, but soon returned to Texas, where they became notorious outlaws, joined by a few other outlaws in their journeys. In August 1874, Jim was killed in a gunfight, and Belle left her children with her mother to continue her life as an outlaw. She then took up a new relationship with Sam Starr, a tall, slim Cherokee outlaw. Throughout her time in the Indian Territory, bootlegging, cattle rustling, and horse thieving to the local First Nations, she became known for her sharp tongue and quick wit, which she used to bribe and convince lawmen to free captured gang members. Belle's reputation as a notorious outlaw grew, and she became a legend of the Old West. Gazettes touted her as a female Robin Hood and a Jesse James. The Bandit Queen had made her mark. After the death of Sam Starr in 1886, Belle remarried for a third time to a much younger outlaw, Jim July. However, the marriage was rocky, leading to July threatening to pay an accomplice to kill Belle after one particularly heated argument. A few days later, on February 3, 1889, Belle was riding home from a neighbor's house when she was shot in the back and killed. The identity of her killer remains a mystery. The ruthless lawlessness of the American Wild West went on to spawn a countless number of famous outlaws and gunslingers, whose stories still captivate our imaginations today. The Wild West slowly came to an end in the 1890s, as law and order gradually established itself, and more people immigrated to and settled west of the Mississippi River. Nevertheless, a romanticized vision of the Wild West continues to live on in modern literature, film, and video games, reminding many of a bygone era of rugged individualism, deadly shootouts, risky robberies, and daring exploits on the untamed American frontier.